Hi, Sinjin. Thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
I'm Sinjin Sharma, 25 years old. Just graduated college in May of 2022. Um, just started working at LyondellBasell, which is a chemical company down in LaPorte, Texas.
And what got you into that?
Um, so I'm a mechanical engineer. Always kind of be interested in the mechanical techie side. I'm into cars. A lot of mechanical engineers will tell you that. Grow up, in the vicinity of NASA. So I was always going to NASA Space Center, the Natural History Museum. So all that kind of came together, and a plant's a good place to see lots of different pieces of equipment, heat exchangers, pumps, turbines, and it's a good place to learn a lot about a lot of different pieces of equipment and kind of satisfy that techie side of my brain.
So always doing something new and different.
Yep, exactly.
Did you know that NASA's planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
I had heard about it, but I don't know a lot of information on it as of right now.
Would it surprise you that most of the people I interview, like at coffee shops and at the mall and stuff, about 80% of them have no clue we're going back to the moon?
I can't say I'm terribly surprised. I think it'd be great if it was advertised a little bit more. I'd love to see it across TV screens everywhere. I think that'd be great, but
Do you watch TV?
um, occasionally, that's fair. I guess if it was there, I'm not sure I'd see it, but occasionally.
I know with like the advent of like the streaming services and stuff, I like don't see any ads, and then they pay like the little extra for like YouTube, so I don't see the ads there either. So
Right.
I'm just like wondering if I was trying to advertise something to myself, how I would do it. Kind of difficult. Hmm. So what do you think about NASA going back to the moon?
I think it's great. I think it's speaking from a neutral standpoint. Everybody's very divided right now. I think it'd be a good unifying action, kind of get everybody together towards one set goal, regardless of political affiliation or anything like that. I think it was a really unifying force back in 1969 when we went the first time. And I think just from a science perspective, it'd be good to go back. It'd be good. Yeah, it's just a really unifying action. And just from a science and kind of nerdy perspective, it'd be fun to go back.
So I've heard a whole wide range of perspectives on this, and I'd like to run some by you and kind of get your take on other people's perspectives, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, like on the far negative side, we've messed up the Earth. We shouldn't mess up the Moon too. How's that? How would you respond to that?
I think it's a fair point. We have made mistakes, and we're currently trying to correct them. I know from speaking from the plant side, obviously that's been a large negative on the earth for a while, and we're trying to roll that back. But it's kind of hard to put the cat back in the bag once it's already out. I think it's just approaching it with sustainability and with that mindset of, okay, we need to be careful. We need to manage our waste well and approach it carefully. I think there is a way to go about it, to where you prevent negative effects to the moon and to space. I know we have a lot of space junk, right, orbiting the Earth as well. But on the other side, I will also say I feel like there's a little bit less of an environment to mess up, right? Not really, as far as we know, anything living that we can screw with. So maybe not as much of a risk, but definitely something good to keep in mind.
Yeah, and you have like meteors constantly hitting the moon, and like the solar radiation and stuff, and it's kind of interesting. It's okay for all these natural things to be destructive, but humanity is held to a higher standard, or
Yeah,
not.
I guess you could take the argument with like Mount Everest, right? You have a lot of oxygen containers lying around. You have lots of debris from climbers, and so just from a maybe like a natural beauty perspective, and obviously, you don't want to be leaving junk everywhere you go. That might have negative effects, unforeseen consequences later on, right?
Absolutely. And then on the more positive side, we should have never stopped going.
I think that one would be hard for me to say. I can see from a monetary perspective why we couldn't continue going. I know those missions do cost quite a bit. It might have been fun to keep it going intermittently. I know whenever we go to NASA, I believe it's the Apollo, I forget if it's the Apollo 17 or 19 rocket that's sitting there. And I always thought it would have been really great if we actually could have used that. We built it, we put all this money into it, all this engineering research time, folks' time, resources. So it's hard for me to give a hard line opinion on that. I think it would have been really cool if we were consistently going, but at the same time, I understand why that program had to be cut short.
Yeah, I know. I think it's more amazing, not that we stopped after Apollo 17, but
Okay.
that we actually had Apollo 12, because like the big forces was like trying to beat the Russians. Like
Right.
they had like the first thing in orbit, the first animal in orbit, the first human in orbit, the first probe on another planet. You know, it's like all these firsts, and we're like, oh, we'll beat you to the moon. Okay, done.
That competition really drove the space race, which is something that's really fun to look back on. There's a lot of negative connotations of that time, but I think the space exploration side of it was definitely a positive.
Um, when you think about the future of humanity, like 200 years out, do you think we're still only on the Earth, or you think humanity's like bubble has expanded to include other places like the moon and Mars and beyond? Like, how far do you think we can expand humanity's influence?
I think 200 years it'd be reasonable to think we have colonies on the moon and potentially Mars as well. Um, I'm not sure how feasible it would be to go outside of that realm. I'd imagine that eventually we're exploring much farther out beyond our solar system. But in terms of a timeline, I expect that to be hundreds of years in the future. But I think 200 years it'd be fair to say we would have colonies on the moon and potentially Mars as well.
Yeah, it's just funny to think about. Like 120 years ago, the number of airline passengers was zero, and now it's like a billion.
Right, and I know a lot of people talk about the technology curve, right? In the 1890s, we didn't have cars. We had very basic technologies, and then from 1890 to 1990, technology rose astronomically. So we might see another boom like that too, which would be pretty cool.
And it's kind of hard to imagine, but 150 years ago, there was no recording of audio. Like nobody, like records didn't exist. I mean, we went thousands of years with nobody being able to record like sounds, and then now you can do it like this.
Yeah, pop in a CD,
Yeah.
Google, YouTube.
If you could, would you take a trip to space?
I definitely would. That would be really cool. I'm not sure I'd be one of the first. I'd want it to be tested a little bit first. That's just the cautious side of me, but I think that's an opportunity you couldn't pass up.
How far would you go? Just one of these little suborbital 15-minute trips, or a couple of days in orbit, or a week trip to the moon and back, or would you immigrate to Mars?
I think immigrating to Mars would be neat. I think I'd have to put my money where my mouth is. If that opportunity ever arose, we'd see if I actually do it. But as of right now, I'd say that'd be really cool to be one of the first folks on Mars. It would be.
That would be awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we didn't get to?
I don't think so. I just, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds. I really hope. I think you said the goal date was 2025 for going back to the moon, right?
It is.
I'd love to see that hold, and I'd love to see that in the near future, and I'd love to see us expand upon that as well. Bring back the moon missions, and also collaborate with other countries as well, right? Not just the U.S., but with allies and hopefully potential other allies as well that we don't have right now. So,
Sounds good. Well, thank you.
thanks.